purely of the coordination between the US CENTCOM and all the Gulf forces deployed there. Now, in this case, it is the Kuwaiti forces. Now, what could have happened is these aircrafts, obviously, why they were taking off. Number one, they were not going for a sortie because they were F-15 aircraft. They were just patrolling the Kuwaiti air skies because the drone threats and the missile threats. So this is one. These must be air defense aircraft. So they were patrolling the Kuwaiti airspace to just see that they can take on any incoming drones, oblique aircraft, or even missiles. Now, what has happened is that perhaps the Kuwaiti forces deployed on ground have used their aircrafts, that is not the aircraft, that is their SAM systems and surface to air missiles. Now, whatever they would be having, whether it is Patriot system, because these are all been handed over by the US. So, probably it has happened that there has been a problem in IFF, that is identification friend foe, and apparently since Kuwait borders Iran also, Iraq, and they would have perhaps felt that it is the Iraqi pilots who have flown in, and therefore they have shot them down. So this clearly reflects that I think the responsibility with the US CENTCOM, it's a huge command, and they are even responsible for areas up to Afghanistan and Pakistan. So coordination on ground is what perhaps has been a failure, and that is why this cause. See, loss of aircraft causes an embarrassment, and definitely it is an embarrassment. Though all the pilots have successfully ejected because they would have realized they have been hit, and we have seen some visuals. So it is just reflecting coordination, and of course the percentage says that since Second World War till date in all the wars, US has suffered about 20% casualties in friendly fire. Shivani.
Ashok Sajjanhar, with you, I want to understand exactly what are the liabilities on an American government, let's say this Trump administration, before launching a war. Now they're actually very interestingly even calling it a strategic military operation and not a war. And it reminded us all of Operation Sindoor because that was called a military operation and not a war. But the phrasing apart, there are questions mounting on Donald Trump and his government whether they needed to have taken some permissions of the Congress before launching this.
Yeah, thank you very much, Shivani, for having me on your show. You're very right. One, there are certain international obligations that you were just discussing before you came, to your guests. There are international obligations that a country has to fulfill before armed conflict with any hostile power. And then there are domestic obligations. So, internationally, we know that Article 2 of the United Nations Charter says very clearly that either you are under attack or there is an imminent threat of attack on you, only then you can act in self-defense. So you have to seek the permission of the UN Security Council, United Nations, before you engage in any military operation, military conflict of that nature. So going to war in that context. And you would remember that till now, although even as far as the Russia-Ukraine conflict has been going on for more than 4 years now, but still it is designated as a special military operation because this is the semantics that countries would tend to resort to because, there are certain obligations both domestically and internationally when you engage in a war in an armed conflict. As far as the domestic obligations are concerned, requirements are concerned in the United States, it again has to go to Congress if it is launching a war against any adversary, against any hostile power. And that the United States has not done. And this is what, will be taken up by the Congress, that this is a power that does not reside with the White House. It doesn't reside with the presidency. And President Trump...
Sir, just hold your thought. We've got some more updates coming in now. ASEAN foreign ministers have expressed serious concerns over escalating Middle East conflicts following the US-Israeli strikes on Iran, calling for strict adherence to the UN Charter. The UN Charter, we've been talking about this, how much of it really holds in the new global world order or whatever remains of it. It seems that for both Israel and America, their quote-unquote imminent threats are more important than any global order. And anyways, we have seen over the last 4 to 5 years, especially with Trump as a president, that not a lot of the law international law is being followed. My colleague Siddhant continues to be with us. We were talking about exactly this. But, this has become laughable a little bit, right? Yes, world leaders will remind them. You can tell us a little bit about the statement as well. But we all know that they're not listening to the UN or any world order or any international rules at all.
Well, that's right, Shivani. So there is this basic difference which I could notice, that this is one of the strongest statement so far by any grouping, multinational grouping, other than the United Nations, any multinational grouping, and this statement is from ASEAN. Now, it also blames Israel and the United States. A statement says that we follow closely the situation and express serious concern over the escalation of conflict in Middle East following the attacks initiated. So the word is very important. Following the attack initiated by Israel and the United States against Iran, and the subsequent retaliatory attacks by Iran against several countries in the region. So attacks initiated, perhaps Israel and America are being blamed now in the ASEAN statement for throwing region into the conflict. In fact, this statement, Shivani, also says that we emphasize the importance of immediate cessation of hostilities and call on all parties concerned to exercise utmost self-restraint, avoid any acts that may further aggravate the situation.
All right, we've got some more breaking news coming in. There is the markets that are open today, and we're getting to know that the Nifty is down by nearly 500 points. The Sensex is down by more than 1,500 points. So remember, we've already seen crores of worth being wiped out as far as the Sensex in India is concerned, the markets are concerned, and with greater instability, with more and more instability, and of course a long-drawn war at the prospect, this is going to continue. I've got Haim with me, 500 points nearly for the Nifty and 1,500 for the Sensex. I think once again this could be worse than the first day on Monday when the markets had opened. They had stabilized a little bit, but this could go further down.
Absolutely, and we're going to continue seeing these sort of disruptions going forward as well. Remember, of course, when we talk about the Strait of Hormuz, that remains the key bargaining chip is what they're calling it. Right now, operations are completely suspended there. If we could later also bring you some of the marine traffic maps on that as well, you will see that there are so many, earlier as well, before it was announced that the Strait of Hormuz was going to be completely shut down, we'd seen a lot of ship owners that backed out citing security concerns as well. We're looking at the surge, we're seeing about 8 to 9% surge in crude oil prices as well. And remember, Shivani, if we were to go by the timeline that President Donald Trump has given us, which is about 4 to 5 weeks, many analysts there are arguing that as per that timeline, we could see prices surge to about $130 a barrel. Right now, it's at $85 a barrel. But if things continue at this rate, that's the kind of surge that
interestingly, yesterday when he was speaking, Donald Trump seemed to suggest to the American population that actually after the brief jump in oil prices, they will eventually stabilize. He has shown that kind of confidence that eventually the prices will stabilize. The entire world is actually a little bit on tenterhooks right now, a little bit nervous about what's going on. And there are some experts that are pointing out, has the world been condemned to another economic downturn, another economic, slide, just when we thought that maybe we could come out of the 2008 slide of COVID, of the pandemic. We've got another war. We had already 2 wars going on, Siddhant.
Yeah. So biggest concern for the world right now, Shivani, is the impact on the economic activities. The Gulf, the entire Gulf region. If we only talk about the United States, let's not discuss any other country, the impact on any other country. If we talk about the United States itself, there's a heavy United States investment in Gulf, in their refining sector, in multiple other sectors. In fact, Strait of Hormuz, LNG production, Aramco was hit, etc., etc. So the economic activities are being impacted, and perhaps US is a country driven by markets, driven by corporates. So there is immense pressure on Donald Trump now to justify this war. I mean, we've been hearing from their lawmakers criticizing Donald Trump only because A, you have not been able to achieve the objective, B, now you're changing the goal.
The costs involved. But since you cover foreign affairs, Siddharth, I want your perspective on this. A lot of people talking about how ahead of that April visit to China that Donald Trump has lined up, basically this is one of his ways to tighten the screws on China. The macro picture is this is US versus China playing out. Donald Trump only wants to, continue to collect pockets of influence so that he can, have some bargaining with both China and Russia behind the scenes. These are the two major countries that are anti-US today, two major countries that have criticized this action, but also that are in almost a Cold War situation, a new Cold War situation with them. So is all of this playing out for greater oil influence? We've seen Venezuela, we've seen the Gulf now.
Yeah. Definitely. I mean, in fact, many experts are saying this, that this is all about the oil influence. In fact, Russia and China both are now, in fact, trying to mediate. They are speaking to both Israel and Iran. A Chinese foreign minister spoke to both Israel and Iran. And in fact, they're urging all sides to exercise restraint, to end the war. But a very important point, Shivani, which in fact nobody is discussing, but I personally feel, in fact I've spoken to many experts as well, that Donald Trump was really not in a good position politically in his own country. Epstein files, then Supreme Court striking down tariffs. Okay. So many are also linking this decision of going after Khamenei at this point in time.
But is it winning him any brownie points domestically?
I don't know, but are we talking...
might be more upset.
Okay. But are we talking about Epstein anymore? Are we talking about tariffs anymore?
All right.
Objective is achieved.
Yes. So, wonderfully in politics, diversionary tactics is what people often say politicians or those in power go for. We've seen these allegations being made in India too. I want to quickly go across to my colleague Pallavi, also joining us. Pallavi, the market's in the red once again, and this could be a pretty bad day today if we go by the opening itself.
Oh, yes, absolutely, Shivani. In fact, markets have not been doing too well in the last couple of weeks. But, this is also something which I think the government has been anticipating and also has been monitoring. Especially, they're going to look at the energy stocks, which the government has also reached out and given an assurance that there's no need to panic, because we have enough supply, both the crude and energy supplies. So we're going to wait to see that whether these are the shares and the stocks which have been affected as far as the market crash is concerned. But whenever, Shivani, there's a little bit of uncertainty, global volatility, but more importantly in those areas like the Gulf areas which hits the supplies, that is where one does expect this kind of impact on the markets.
We're also getting updates that the rupee is continuing to slide further down. 66 paisa is what we know right now. Tell us more of how, the Indian Finance Ministry, the RBI and others are looking at this situation.
Shivani, the gold surge or the silver price surge is something which has been going on for weeks and for a couple of months. And the RBI closely monitors it. The Finance Ministry says that they step in only when they find the situation completely alarming and out of control. So far, they say that that situation has not arisen. The immediate impact which they really would worry about is the fact that it could have an impact on the inflationary tendencies. But as far as the rupee sliding is concerned, again, this was something which the Finance Ministry says and sources are saying that we were aware of. We did know that this is something which is going to happen. Again, the RBI is doing a 24/7 monitoring of the situation. As much of the situation that is there in their control, they're trying to do, but they are trying to improve the market sentiment. At this point of time, it is very important to make our exporters, the traders, and generally those who are working in the market, that you have to ensure that things are under control, but also more importantly, give an assurance and a confidence that there's no need to panic.
Okay, Pallavi, we'll keep coming back to you. Remember, the entire game could be about oil, and Iran has blockaded the Strait of Hormuz, which is a very, very important port. 20 to 25% of all global oil is transferred or traverses from here. So I want to show you, the biggest question in everybody's mind is, what are the alternatives available for this route? The Gulf region has limited backup routes to keep this oil flowing. So let's take you through those. One, of course, is the Saudi Arabia East-West pipeline. This is the one that goes via the Red Sea. This has a capacity of about 5 million barrels a day. It can be expanded to 7 million barrels a day. So remember, this is the Strait of Hormuz, which is now blocked. Iranian, IRGC forces, others, they're just not allowing tankers to go through. They've already been, firing at certain vessels as well. This is the Red Sea. This is the Red Sea. This is Saudi Arabia. So obviously the oil was to go through this route. Saudi Arabia has a pipeline. They have the port of Yanbu here. And some of that oil can, of course, go via the Red Sea as well. Even this has a very, very narrow point of exit as far as Africa and Middle East is concerned. So this is one of those. It has a capacity of only 5 million barrels a day. Remember, as far as the Strait of Hormuz is concerned, there's about 20 million barrels a day, which is its capacity. So this moves the crude from the eastern oil fields to the Red Sea, and it bypasses the Hormuz entirely. What is the other option? The other option is the UAE's Abu Dhabi crude oil pipeline. This will go via the Gulf of Oman. This can carry about 1.5 million barrels a day. So none of them are going to replace the requirement of the Strait of Hormuz, but there can be some backup options. So where is this port of Fujairah in UAE? So this is the Strait of Hormuz. Yeah, ships have to come out from there, have to go in from there. This port of Fujairah is a little bit before that in the Gulf of Oman. So this also then doesn't become captive to the Strait of Hormuz being held captive. So this also bypasses the need of going through the Strait of Hormuz. These are the couple of options. Barring that, there's not much else, frankly. And even their capacity is not so high that this can replace the requirement entirely. The Indian Oil Ministry, Petroleum and Gas Industry Ministry has already talked about how they are looking at alternative routes. Some of these are these routes, but they will also have to, of course, diversify their oil requirements from other sources. What happens to that Russian oil embargo is the big question as well. We'll slip into a very short break. News and updates continue in just a bit.
Devastation, a direct hit by a missile.
Picture is that the US is not able to defend.
Of a drone, a massive, the number of ballistic missiles.
Where is it that Iran is actually placing its resources right now?
Tabriz, Sanandaj, Kemal Shah. And this is now what they are doing since yesterday. They are conducting more or less organized.
US bases have been targeted. Drone has been shot down now.
Iran can then threaten or attack enemy nationals.
A massive missile and drone attack over here.
Iran now has been completely, in some ways, dominated.
With ballistic missile attack. It means the Kuwaiti air defense was under big strain.
Breaking news coming in. According to Iranian media reports, Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei will be buried in the northeastern city of Mashhad. This is the latest information that we are getting right now. According to the Iranian media reports, Iran's Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei to be buried in the northeastern city of Mashhad, and this is the latest that we're learning right now. For more on this, we have General Kulkarni with us as well as Ambassador Prabhu Dayal. Thank you so much for staying on with us on the broadcast as well. Ambassador, if I could come to you as well. Now, there's also been a lot of conversation of what Ayatollah Ali Khamenei meant for a lot of people, what he symbolized, and that's been something that has led to a lot of discourse online as well.
You know, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was the second supreme leader. When the Islamic Revolution occurred in 1979, Ayatollah Khomeini became the supreme leader. He was certainly the biggest voice in the Islamic forces. And after his demise, Ayatollah Khamenei was elected the supreme leader. I happened to serve in Iran just a few years after he became supreme leader, and when I was serving there, he continued to be a very powerful person in Iran. Now, his son has now been elected the supreme leader, and this is because the IRGC and the clergy don't want to appear disunited. You know, the Americans want to bring about a regime change. So do the Israelis. So, as far as the IRGC is concerned, it wants to show that Iran stands united. And if there were dissenting voices which openly questioned the election of Ayatollah Mustafa Khamenei, then it would have appeared that the regime is fracturing. But the Iranians have tried to give the impression that they stand united and that any pressure to bring about regime change has not succeeded. Let me also mention that this war is going on exactly as it was expected. It was expected that the Americans and the Israelis would escalate the conflict and they would inflict a huge damage on the Iranians. That has happened. More than 787 persons have died. In fact, there are reports that the casualty figure has crossed 1,000. And it was also expected that the Iranians would widen the area of the conflict. And that they have done by attacking US embassies and consulates in the Gulf, also American bases. But of course, there has also been a collateral damage, and that has made the Arab Gulf states quite angry. And in fact, their alliances with the United States seem to have been cemented even further because they need the US for helping them out.
And Ambassador, the military escalation by Iran has only gone up. We've not seen them back down as yet, and this despite a leadership void at least for a few hours now. General Kulkarni, with Mujtaba Khamenei taking over, how do you see this playing out for Iran militarily? Because here's a man who's not a high-ranking cleric, does not have an official role in the regime. Yes, during the Iran-Iraq war, he did serve in the Iranian armed forces. Will that be enough to take Iran to the last phase of this conflict? What are your thoughts there? Because a lot of muscle and military flexing is underway as we speak. US says we have enough stocks, we're all stocked up. Iran says US stockpile is shrinking. You know, Israel has its own back and forth on with Hezbollah as we speak. Where do you see this leadership now take Iran?
Yeah, I fully agree with my distinguished panelist, Ambassador Dayal, because he has first-hand information of Iran. And let me tell you, if you want peace, be ready for a very, very destructive war, very, very expensive war. Mustafa brings no change. He's the new Mustafa. His brother may be Mustafa, but he's the new Mustafa with IRGC in complete control. And Pezeshkian almost sidelined. Even in the olden times, the ambassador sir will agree. Even in olden times, when Khamenei was there used to be a huge lot of differences between Rafsanjani and Ahmadinejad. But despite that, he managed it. But
if this prolongs.
Good morning, Mangalam. There is certainly an impact. The good news is that everyone is safe, guests and our associates. The impact is more significant in Dubai than in India at the moment. But yes, there is disruption in air traffic. When it comes to international passengers, I have a lot of requests coming in directly to me for people who have got stranded in India and want to go back to Europe, if they could extend their hotel stays and what we could do for them on a special need basis. So there is certainly an impact. But I also have to say, it's very strange. We started the financial year in April with Pahalgam and then followed it with Operation Sindoor in May and the airline accident in June. And now we are ending the year with geopolitical tension, which we have not witnessed in this scale, and that too very close to India.
Right. So, you know, if you could draw upon some of the financial impact that you saw at the start of this financial year because of these, tensions that we saw in the country, and as a result of which, if you had to extrapolate the impact that could happen at this point as well. Obviously, it's good to know that all your guests, employees, associates, everyone is safe. This is a human crisis, and hotels, to give them credit, they've been very, very supportive. We see posts on social media, etc. as well, where they've been fairly supportive of stranded tourists. But all of that does come at a bit of a cost. Not the perfect time to discuss this, but an important one nevertheless.
Yeah, for sure, Mangalam. The year has been as volatile as it could have been. I mean, it must have had an impact of 5 to 7% on the top line for us, despite the fact that we have been, guiding and posting a double-digit growth, pretty high. We still feel that we'll end up the year north of 14% for the year, including in flight kitchen business. It could have been much higher because the demand has been very strong. So the good news is that despite all the challenges we have seen in the last 12 months, the sector has demonstrated resilience and it keeps coming back. Just like you just now showed some airline figures that there has been growth in Jan in 7% in air traffic, as an example. So for us, Jan was good, but February was outstanding. And we don't see the domestic demand or cancellations in the way we have seen cancellations for Dubai or the rest of the Western world.
Right. And it's not only an impact on flights to Dubai, it's also an impact flights through Dubai, right? The thing that the hospitality sector has been grappling with right now post-COVID is that international travel hasn't returned to India in the way it was pre-COVID. And that was one of the deltas for the sector, which could have driven higher room rates, etc. But with this happening, do you think that gets pushed down the road?
Absolutely, it will be pushed on the road. So there is the bad news is that the international foreign tourist arrivals never picked up the way they should have post-COVID. But also that has some good news that there is not much needed to replace that business, which if it would have been very strong. So I think we were lagging behind and we continue to lag behind. And the majority of the seasonal traffic is over, which is October to March is when you get the majority of the international traffic coming in. So we got our very good share through the government delegations. We just finished the Canadian Premier's visit at Taj Mahal in Mumbai, or we had, German Chancellor, British Premier, AI Summit got in so many heads of states. So I think all in all that helped the numbers of foreign tourist arrivals, but because we are coming at such a low base, the impact of foreign tourists going down does not help us to cover that delta, as you said, Mangalam. But it also is not that we have a loss of business in a very significant amount.
Right. And finally, just to wrap this conversation, impact on Middle East, yes, there is some, but limited to you guys. And despite, the kind of geopolitical tensions that we've seen, your revenue over the last 1 year has been impacted only by 5 to 7%. It would have grown a lot higher had it not been for these things. But growth, nevertheless, is there. And let's end this conversation with that growth part itself. This quarter is a strong one for MICE as well, meetings and weddings, conferences, etc. How has that part played out so far? And are you reasonably satisfied with all the other parts barring this?
Well, Mangalam, nice that you said, let's wrap this up and let's wrap this up on a positive note. It's been a very good start to the last quarter of the year. So Jan and Feb have been good. I see no reason after the disruption, unless, something major happens in terms of this geopolitical tension, taking a totally different dimension. I have no doubt that the domestic demand, which has been very, very resilient post-COVID, will help us sail through with a good finish to the quarter 4 of this financial year.
And the current crisis does not impact your hotel signings and openings that you've lined up for West Asia, right? If you could throw some light on that.
What answer you're looking for, Mangalam, but our signings and openings, this is the strongest year in the history. The number of hotels we signed equals maybe the number of hotels we had 8 years ago. So the total signings in 1 year exceeds the number of hotels we had in the portfolio. So that way the going is strong. And if we take a breather or a pause for a few months, it does not change anything in the openings. We'll be opening. We have opened 2 hotels this month already till the 4th of March, and we will open another 3 but all on the domestic front. We might end up delaying Frankfurt by a week or 10 days so that it goes into, post-Easter in the month of April.
So it's supply and signings delayed, not supply and signings denied.
Absolutely.
Take that point. Good luck. Once again, wishing that all your employees and guests are safe amidst this crisis, along with your leadership teams, etc., out there as well. And the impact is limited to the financials that we speak of. With that, we'll take a short break, come back, the discussion around shipping and rice sector and the impact following the US-Iran tensions for you.
Welcome back. This is Corporate Radar and you're tuned in to CNBC TV 18. Well, keep an eye out on the index. The problem is, the Nifty Bank that continues to see a lot of selling pressure, and that's down 1,200 points. Remember, the highest amount of FI weightage is on the banking names. And because of that, in fact, the markets are seeing a lot of selling pressure. However, a few stocks are trying to put in a bit of a fight. Let's pull up a few of those names. Bharti Airtel, I think it's seen more than a 10% correction just in the last few days. That's recovered close to 2% from the day's low. So Bharti Airtel is one stock. Big boy HDFC Bank as well was down close to 2.5%. Now that's cutting its losses, and that's a large weight. So that's why we're seeing some bit of a pullback out there. And Eternal as well has cut its losses. That stock as well has moved up a little bit. It's on the verge of moving into the green. So keep an eye out on that one. And as I mentioned earlier today, the tech stocks could actually be in focus because they've actually got sold into, it's underperformed big time. The rupee weakness could play out in their favor as well. So for the time being, that is the outperforming index today. The tech index up 0.8% in a market that's a little bit wobbly. But the broader markets, I think, are calling for attention. As of now, only 330 stocks are advancing. That compares to 2,500 stocks that are declining. But let's move on then. US President Donald Trump has said that the US Navy will protect ships in the Middle East if the need arises. That's if it's necessary, in a bid to stop the energy supply crunch sparked tensions in the region. To discuss this, how will the conflict disrupt global shipping and impact on Indian rice exporters as well, we're now joined by Sunil Vaswani, the Executive Director at Container Shipping Lines Association, who joins in. And a short while, I think we'll get the management of KRBL as well. Good morning, Mr. Vaswani, and thanks a lot for joining us here on CNBC TV 18. Well, very, very tricky times going by the geopolitical issue. It's clearly plaguing a lot of sectors, and in particular, the shipping industry. Give us a sense about what feedback you've received over the last few days in terms of the routes, the traffic, the insurance as well out there, a broad feedback.
Morning, and thanks for having me here. These are indeed unprecedented times and a matter of concern, though, for everybody. And as shipping lines, we very well realize this. And let me assure everyone that we are doing all we can to assist the trade. Having said that, over the last few days, we've suddenly seen an escalation in conflict. And as a result of that, the shipping lines were forced to suspend their services to the Gulf ports. But on the other hand, as far as the main routes are concerned, the long-haul routes are concerned, to the US East Coast and Europe and the Med, for instance, the services continue. Although some of the lines may have had to adjust their services and deployment, but the services do continue. So let me take you back to the COVID period. Even those were very unprecedented times. But over the last 5 years, we've seen quite a few situations where we have eventually got over those situations and handled the business effectively. During COVID also, suddenly COVID struck, as you know, and then there was heavy demand for capacity. So initially, of course, the freight rates shot up and everybody was running helter-skelter, the shipping lines for capacity. But eventually we did find capacity and we put in the additional ships and the services were brought into place and everything worked out well, even as far as the rates are concerned. Then more recently, 2 years ago, when the Houthis struck at Bab al-Mandab, we had to discontinue our services over the Suez and we started moving our ships over the Cape of Good Hope. So ever since, we put in additional capacities and the ships have been moving over the Cape of Good Hope. But a couple of lines had reverted to sailing over the Suez. Those lines have now been forced to move over the Cape. But having said that, what I'm trying to drive at is that the situation is not as bad as it seems because we have the experience as shipping lines to deal with these situations. We've already put our capacities over the Cape by and large. And those who haven't, they have just started moving over the Cape. So things are more or less under control. But as far as the vessel scheduling is concerned, yes, that will be a bit of a challenge, but we will work around that as well. Thank you.
Just for simplicity, Mr. Vaswani, is it possible to say what is the percentage of cargo which is stuck right now, and what is the percentage which has been rerouted through the Cape? Is it possible to give that number? And then also the cost of travel, the increased travel and insurance, that has gone up for the Indian companies. If you could give a number to that, yeah.
Sure. So the insurance cost, of course, has gone up. And I would say the cost of bunkers, for instance, that's definitely gone up. Over the last 1 month, has gone up from $60 to $83. So there's a significant rise in the cost of bunkers, so cost of oil, which increases the cost of operations for us. As far as the cargoes that are stuck, see, essentially we're talking about cargoes to the Persian Gulf. Cargoes, containers to the long-haul destinations in the US, Europe, Med, those are moving. So Persian Gulf, of course, that's something that we'll have to work on or we'll have to see how to get about it. But most of the cargo, I would say, is all moving because it's going on to long-haul destinations. Now, if you speak about the cost, if you see during COVID, the cost at that point of time had gone up also significantly. You had gone up to from $600 or $700 for Europe, say, for instance, then went up right to about $6,000. And then suddenly after that came down to about 1/10 of that. And then again started going up during the Red Sea crisis. And we've practically come down almost to pre-COVID levels just before this situation arose. What I'm trying to drive at is that initially, any situation, there will be an impact. But then eventually, when you start working around it, things come down to normalcy. So that said, I would say that, there is a cause for concern, certainly, but there is no cause for panic.
All right, we take that point, Sunil, and when you started the conversation, you said these are unprecedented times. What we've learned over the last 5 or 6 years is that the usage of the word unprecedented has itself been unprecedented because we've gone through COVID, we've gone through multiple geopolitical tensions and tariff tantrums and so many things, right? So perhaps the street has learned to live in the VUCA world, as we call it. But we also have Akshay Gupta, who's the business head, bulk exports at KRBL, who joins in. Akshay, rice is an important commodity which has been exported to West Asia, not alone Iran. If you could give us a sense on what yours and the industry's exposure to that region would be, and what the impact over the last few days has been, and what is it likely to be over the next week or so?
Sure. Hello. So, Middle East and West Asia, I think, accounts for more than 65% of India's exports of basmati rice. So it is one of the major regions of our customer base. And, it's a big impact. It's a big impact for the entire industry. Moreover, it's the season of Ramzan where the maximum consumption happens of basmati rice. So January, February and March, these are the peak seasons where the maximum supplies happen. And at this time, facing such a turmoil is hampering the entire supply chain from production to shipment to, customer base. So I think this is the biggest impact that the industry can have.
What's been the increase in the price of basmati on account of this choke?
No, so prices were increasing up till 15th of February or maybe 20th of February as well. We were seeing all-time high prices. But right after this war was announced, we've seen a sudden drop in prices because everyone's worried about Iran. Iran is the biggest market for Indian basmati rice. It's the biggest importer of Indian basmati. So suddenly prices have dropped by about 5 rupees a kilo, which is about $50 a ton. So, and now the only question in everyone's mind is how long this war is going to last. So the duration of the war is the biggest concern.
Right. So, Akshay, you're saying there's been a drop in prices by, how much did you say the drop in prices was?
$50 per ton in the last 1 week, yeah.
$50 per ton. And what are you doing with the excess capacity now, since you are unable to export to the Middle East?
No, so on an immediate basis, we've just stopped all our production of units or production orders for the Middle East, and we're just focusing on other countries at the moment because shipping lines, insurance, everything is a concern. Till we get clarity on that, we will not make shipments. So everything is at hold right now. We have about a big quantity of stock at our Kandla plant, which is being put on hold.
Right.
It's a matter of time. If in a couple of days we see something ease up, we might continue shipments.
Right.
But if this goes longer, then it will be a big concern.
Hi, Akshay. Good to see you. And Nigel on this side. A quick question. 60% of rice exports, go to the West Asia, I think is what you said, right?
Middle East and West Asia.
Middle
Correct,
East.
yeah.
And out of your total basket, 50% is exports, I think so. So in all, 30% of your total, revenues will be from West Asia and Middle East. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. What about some of that stock that was already en route? Has it reached the destination? Or, because there has been a lot of problem on the logistics fronts as well. Is some of your, sales still stuck midway or some other port? Kandla port is what you mentioned. But at some, foreign base, is there some inventory that's stuck up there?
No, so Middle East is actually not a very long transit route. Maximum, 5 to 12 days is the maximum period. So I don't think anything on waters is an issue for us because everything was about to reach or will reach in a couple of days. So I don't think that's a concern. More of a concern is cargo which is lying at the port, which is custom cleared, which will incur demurrage and all those kinds of things. So we are already in talks with APIDA and Ministry of Commerce to facilitate the trade in supporting with these costs. So that is what is going on right now. But yeah.
What could the quantum of those costs be, the demurrage charges and, the cost of that cargo staying at the port itself?
Again, it's a matter of time. Couple of days, it doesn't matter. But if it goes on for, multiple weeks, then it will be a cause of concern.
And you won't be able to pass it on to the clients?
Depends. Some clients might be able to, but for us, as a company, it will not matter because we have distributors across. We're not dealing with direct buyers or something like that. So it's our own brand. So we might be able to pass it on. But see, we consider our distributors as our partners, right? We don't want to pass on the unnecessary cost. So till the time, what we are suggesting our customers is that if they have stocks, they should wait for a couple of weeks for the situation to calm down, and then we can resume new shipments. So we're not trying to create panic for the buyers as well. So we are managing stocks in that way.
So you've stopped production for the entire Middle East basket, and plus you're sitting on a large cargo at the airport. Is that correct, Akshay?
No, so large cargo at the port would be for the industry. For us, it would not be a big quantum, but production have been stopped, so that would be a concern, yes.
All right. And that would be about 30% because that is the exports to the Middle East. Correct? Approximately.
Annual basis, 30% of our revenue gets impacted.
All right. Thank you very much for joining in. Great conversation and providing that perspective. But back to the markets and no recovery as of now. Nagraj Shetty, Senior Technical Research Analyst at HDFC Securities, is now joining in on the show. Nagraj, 533 points lower. What is the advice on the Nifty?
Hi, good morning, Rima. Market is just echoing the global uncertainties and rising geopolitical tension. The supports are the levels where the market is penetrating day by day on the echo of the global concern. I think the overall chart pattern is indicating weak bias. And if you deep dive into our long-term charts, which is indicating the recent decline that started a few sessions ago from the higher levels, is we are in a last down leg of the whole thing before showing any bounce back. I think I must say that 24,000, 24,100 should act as a good base for the market to give a decisive bounce back from the lower levels in the near term.
Okay, Nagraj, I want to ask you about the Nifty Bank because the Nifty is trading below most simple moving averages. But the Nifty Bank is still 2% away from its 200 DMA. Do you think going by the price action, we're getting there as well? So another 1,000 points down on the Nifty Bank is possible?
Yeah, it is rightly possible because the bank Nifty has been in a outperforming phase compared to Nifty over the last few months, and higher tops and bottoms indicating the strength building up in the Bank Nifty recently before showing decline from the higher levels. I think there is a higher possibility that 200-day EMA somewhere around 57,600, 500 level is going to act as a base for the banking stocks without falling at the lower levels.
Okay, all right. You've got a couple of picks for us, so let's get straight to that.
Yeah, I have two picks. One is from strong stocks from either extreme. First one from a long side. If you look at Coal India, chartically it has been outperforming the benchmark as well as the sectors. Recently, we have seen some consolidation momentum. They try to attempt to break out of the consolidation. Currently trading around 2% higher during this volatile market, and trading around 435. The overall chart pattern is looking very positive, very resilient in terms of the global markets and the benchmark Nifty. I'm advising to buy at this point of time, currently trading around 435. The immediate upside target would be around 465 and can place a stop loss at 420 in the near term. Second one is from a weak side, JSW Energy. JSW Energy has been in a downtrend with the larger lower tops and bottoms over the period of time. Recently, it has finished the lower tops around the 506, 507, reacted down fresh in the last 2-3 sessions. There is a higher scope of further weakness in the stock. Currently trading around 466. One can look to sell this stock at right now, and the immediate downside target would be around 430. One can place a stop loss at 480.
All right, take that point, Rajesh. Thank you so Nagraj. Thank you so much for joining in and giving us your views on the index and individual stocks. What we'll do is take a short break. On the other side, Manisha Gupta joins in with the focus on all things commodities. This as the Nifty is down about 553 points. We are seeing a deeper correction in the broader end of the markets, 2,500 stocks in the red. Is that likely to be further impacted by the rise that we're seeing in commodity prices? Manisha takes that forward.
Welcome back. Let's talk commodities. That's where you are seeing the brunt of the impact of Middle East. Manisha is now joining in with the big moves that we've seen there. Manisha?
Thank you so much for that. Should bring the crude prices on your screen right now because it has been a very volatile week. This one, we have seen $85 a barrel as well, which has been the highest since July 2024. We are up nearly 20% in this week for the crude oil prices. It has been a strong surge across crude varieties. So whether it's about WTI, Brent, Urals, Russian crude and the Middle East basket as well, all of that has been trading quite on the higher side there. It's not just the crude oil prices. It has to do with the gas, distillates, crude products. All of that has surged in the last couple of days therein. So when you look at the European natural gas prices, well, they are up by 10% this week itself. The US diesel futures are trading at October 2023 highs as well. And then you have the US gasoline prices. They are trading the highest since July 2024. Also take a look at the crack spreads or the refining profit margins as we call it. That also has been surging. That is highest since 2023 also. Well, a lot of that really depends on the oil supply disruptions and the Strait of Hormuz. So when it comes to Strait of Hormuz, Iran already has said that they will fire any ship trying to pass Strait of Hormuz. In the meanwhile, there are statements coming in from US as well suggesting that they will provide insurance and naval escorts as well to the tankers transiting through Strait of Hormuz. This is US International Development Finance Corporation saying that they would also insure some of these vessels. So that is a conversation that is happening at this point in time. But we do understand that major shipping companies already have said that they are looking to avoid Strait of Hormuz right now. Now, this is an interesting one. The super tanker cost in West Asia is now at an all-time high of $400,000 a day therein. I mean, these are the super tankers which carry 2 million barrels of crude at one time, and the cost therein has risen quite strongly. This actually is 50% higher to what we were trading in the previous week. Not just that, the LNG daily freight rates also have gained up by 40% in matter of a day and is trading at $60,000 therein, with markets anticipating that 100,000 perhaps is a possibility in this week itself if the Strait of Hormuz does not open or, as have been the statements, they are not carried out therein. Interestingly, it also has to do with the kind of supply disruptions that we have seen into the market. The vessel availability for March is seen tight due to backlogs. It was harsh winter in the month of Jan and Feb. And now with vessels stuck at Strait of Hormuz, the cost or the availability also is getting quite difficult. The West war has led to a lot of intensification in sense of shutdowns and precautionary shutdowns as well. So Iraq, which is number 2 crude oil producer in OPEC, has halted operations at some fields, cut production by 1.5 million barrels per day there. It also has to do with China, which has led to some refinery shutdowns, or they have brought their maintenance plans slightly forward currently right there. Qatar also has stopped LNG production. You also have Israel, which is stopping production in some gas fields. It also has to do with Saudi Arabia, which also has shut some refinery operations there. So many of these Middle East countries rich in oil and gas are shutting or partially shutting their productions there. Interestingly, when you look at the volumes therein, they have been pretty high. In various countries, especially in ICE, if you look at the overall volumes for crude and crude futures and options, that has hit a record of 12.7 million contracts there. Also, the US oil producers are rushing to hedge in long these higher prices, and that also has led to increase in volumes. Interestingly, the US production right now stands at around 13.7 million barrels per day, and the markets believe that this is near peak, but it also is a belief that if this continues for another couple of weeks or so, then we are looking at the crude oil prices jumping beyond 85, 95 is the next level that the street is now talking about.
Thank you very much for that. The other big story is the fact that rupee